today we're going to be talking about the ways that Tianmei's World Academy contributes to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals and how they could further contribute, and the ways that they could increase the audience outreach in the UK. Tianmei's World is a environmental psychology-led company with the aim of redefining the learning experience. TNWA operates a network of classrooms concept. This is that a classroom or teaching environment can be anywhere. TNWA and its values fit neatly within the realm of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, primarily regarding education. These SDGs were devised by the UN, and there are 17 SDGs, and the UN plans for all of these to be met by 2030.
Yeah, so this is my SDG that I was trying to look at, obviously access and quality to education. So as we touched on, as Joel touched on previously, it obviously relates to the SDG goals, obviously primarily education as well. So SG 4 is for access to quality of education, and it aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education to promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. This goal supports a reduction of disparities and inequalities in education, but it's also in relation to access and quality, and I do think that distinction is quite important as well. Looking forwards and looking further about what this means primarily to Tianmei's World Academy, and again more broadly with education, it's a process of facilitating learning or the acquisition of knowledge, skills, values, beliefs, or habits. And quality education specifically entails issues such as appropriate skills, such as gender parity, provision of relevant school infrastructure, equipment, education materials, and resources, scholarships, or teaching force. So that sort of impacts both the access and the quality of education. Obviously, it's of critical importance with its effects on the other SDGs, as I know the other two will touch upon in terms of socioeconomic mobility and how education can help that, and also gender inequality moving forward. So I'll let the other two touch upon their goals as well.
So yeah, I did SDG 5. I looked at gender equality, and yeah, this SDG was incorporated into the UN Sustainable Development Goals, as we mentioned in the intro, with the goal of achieving gender equality and empowering women. Within this goal, as with other Sustainable Development Goals, there's a few smaller targets that the UN aims to reach. This one fits really closely with Tianmei's World Academy's objectives, and one that fits really closely is target 5.1 within the broader goal, and that is ending discrimination against all women and girls. Tianmei's World Academy widens girls' opportunities through the use of their schooling programs and their environmental psychology considerations. By encouraging technology use in Tianmei's World learning environments, this element of your organisation also helps to empower women.
The SDG I focused on was SDG 10. The aim of SDG 10 was to reduce inequality within and among countries. I mainly focused on income inequality because this is especially important in the UK. In the period leading up to the financial year ending in 2020, income inequality actually increased every year in the 10-year period, and it was 36.3% in the last year. The way Tianmei's World Academy contributes to SDG 10 is they build equal opportunities regardless of economic background, and they also provide free educational content accessible via their social media platforms. So this obviously helps people who do not have these opportunities to learn.
And then obviously this is just a little description of our method. Our sampling method, we chose to use a survey, and we put it on Google Forms, sent that to people we knew, sent that around. And for the survey, the questions were formulated with clearly a specific focus on the 3 SDGs, 4, 5, and 10, and the learning environment. To gain optimal participant insight, we chose to use open-ended questions that could be easily expanded on. And to ensure that the survey produced representative data, we made our questions as neutral as we could to eliminate any question bias.
So just to quick analysis of SDG4, which is obviously my domain for this one. So the questions that were asked were as follows. So obviously the first one, do you go to a coffee shop to study, or do you prefer more traditional study spaces? Do you learn effectively and gain knowledge through resources such as books, movies, talks, etc.? And how would you describe a supportive working environment? So in the next few slides, we'll sort of expand on the results and the answers we got based on all three of those questions and sort of why these questions were proposed in the first place. Okay, so obviously the first question, we got a little words web, I suppose, is the way of saying that, just because this question was proposed sort of as openly as possible, as Sophie sort of expanded on previously. It obviously allows us to view the opinions of respondents alongside the values in greater detail, rather than sort of pushing them down pre-given options and eliminating any biases or anything like that they may have. The question, obviously, do you go to a coffee shop to study, or do you prefer more traditional study spaces? I was proposing an attempt to see how the respondents value their working and learning environments. And obviously it's great importance to the company, as obviously it's got the world's first decentralized network of classrooms, and that concept is obviously has the aim to redefine where and how learning happens. And obviously that's achieved by turning any available space, sort of such as coffee shops, libraries, offices, etc., as we sort of mentioned in the question, into alternative learning environments. So we want to see how people views sort of less traditional spaces, such as coffee shops and stuff like that, compared to more traditional study spaces, such as libraries, and stuff like that. So obviously moving on to the responses that we've got, 7 responses stated that traditional learning spaces such as university, school, or general libraries, they preferred more traditional spaces. 8 preferred coffee shops, so again less traditional study spaces, and a further 3 respondents stated that they had no preference. So this was a mix between sort of them literally saying they had no preference between more traditional and less traditional, or some people said a mix of both as well, which was obviously encouraging to see as well. So overall, these responses are positive for Tianmei's World Academy, as it's obviously shown that there's no great preference for any type of study space, obviously showcasing that the network of classrooms and how that is been so successfully implemented in China could also be a success in the UK due to these responses. Of responses, 6 stated they'd preferred to study at home. Now, obviously, that doesn't lend itself to Tianmei's World Academy as much. But looking at the response in greater detail, because we asked for more open response and asked them to expand as much as possible, one of the responses that I highlighted was this one here. So it says, under normal circumstances, I would go to the uni library, but COVID closed the library, so I study in my room instead. So potentially we've got this, these 6 responses saying that they prefer to study at home due to the change in sort of aspects and how isolation is, which has become obviously increasingly commonplace in the UK as well, even as summer lock-ins are sort of coming out. It shows how people's habits and mindsets may be changing. So hopefully that will change as sort of the end of COVID progresses, if it ever does end. But you know, we were looking at those 6 responses saying they prefer to study at home and seeing potential reasons about why that is, and potentially that could be to do with sort of changing mindsets, changing attitudes due to COVID. Question 2, do you feel you learn more effectively and gain knowledge through resources such as books, movies, talks, etc.? Obviously, this is one of the ways that Tianmei's World Academy does its learning and helps people have their access to more learning, more education, due to their 4-stage educational framework. we've got more information on our actual document laying out how that happens and how the questions sort of and how the responses sort of respond to that and how it can link to the UK. But essentially, as I mentioned previously at the start, this question relates more to quality of education along with access to education. So obviously that's its primary focus of this specific question. And obviously based on the responses we obtained, the vast majority said that that they viewed it as an effective method for them to gain knowledge. I think there's only one respondent that we had out of 25 saying that they don't find it effective. So obviously that's really encouraging for Tianmei's World Academy and techniques that they use and how that can be applied to the UK. So again, that's a really encouraging answer, particularly with this 4-stage educational framework. This question asked respondents how you would describe a supportive working environment. Again, I've sort of got the word map there in the top right-hand side because we asked for more open-ended answers. Again, it's an open question. It gives respondents the opportunity to express their thoughts more thoroughly without guiding them down specific answers, so we can see more genuine responses. Obviously, again, it allows us to see whether Tianmei's World Academy and our respondents' opinions and sort of techniques match and how that could be implemented in the UK as well. Based on their responses, there is clearly a match that we've seen, and below are just 3 examples that I thought were particularly important to show the match between them. So obviously we've got there fosters openness and positivity, like-minded people towards a similar goal, collaboration, cooperation, and just an opportunity to learn. Obviously all these are very similar and lend themselves to the approach that Tianmei's World Academy operates. So it shows that, you know, the traditional one-size-fits-all approach that many organisations sort of currently employ and organise, and obviously something that Tianmei's World Academy has offered a different alternative to, is something that our respondents really do feel is beneficial to them when we ask them to describe their sort of ideal and more supportive working environment. So that really helps there. And again, it just shows the merits of Tianmei's World Academy and how that can help with the UK as well, because obviously, again, it goes against the grain of this one-size-fits-all approach.
So this is just the analysis of my SDG 5 that's coming up now. So yeah, my questions start with, whilst in school, did you ever experience sexist comments from other pupils? Question 2, have you ever experienced any form of unwanted sexual attention / sexual assault? 3, were you always supported by teachers to choose the subjects you were most interested in? And you know, did you ever feel deterred from certain subjects? And my final question was, did you feel you missed out on any opportunities due to your gender? That's the questions I asked in the survey in correlation with the gender equality SDG. Yeah, just looking at the figure here, I just made a little pie chart. So of the 24 responses to this question, 15 participants expressed that they did not experience sexist comments from other pupils whilst in school. But as you can see from the slide, 12 noted that they did. So I've just written a few implications at the bottom. What implications does this data have for Tianmei's World Academy? It shows us that sexist comments and sexism as a broader concept still exist within the UK's educational system. And in finding this out, it shows us that Tianmei's World has a place in looking at gender inequality. It has a place in still doing work concerning that. You know, as you can see from the data, that's just something that hasn't been achieved. So yeah, question 2 will now go on to talk about any experiences of unwanted sexual attention or sexual assault in educational environments. So I just did a little table here to showcase those responses. So here, of the sample of 25 participants, 10 participants explained that they had experienced a form of unwanted sexual attention / sexual assault, and 5 said they didn't. As you can see, there's more have, which is dire and unfortunate. So in terms of the implications for this question, then the data shows a similar reality to the question above. It shows that gender equality in education in the UK still hasn't been achieved. And, you know, the way that Tianmei's World Academy contributes to sustainable development goals like gender equality are of value. So once again, there's some implications that this data has for Tianmei's World. It shows us, yeah, as I just briefly said, the amount of people that are experiencing the unwanted attention, that the sexual assault outweighs those that haven't. And it shows that, yeah, Tianmei's World is a company that has importance here and can do a lot to help. Moving on to question 3 then, it asks people about teacher-based help and whether pupils felt supported to choose the subjects that they wanted to do. So yeah, just another table on this slide as well to help you see some responses. Out of the 25 participants who took part, 20 said that they did feel supported in relation to subject choice, and the remaining 4 said that they did not, with some saying that they actually felt deterred from choosing certain subjects. So in analysing this data, looking at the implication, it shows us that, you know, for the most part, the majority in the UK context, most pupils did feel supported and encouraged, which is really good in relation to their subject choice. In most participants responding like this, it means that gender equality is becoming more of a reality over time. And Tianmei's World Academy is in the right place to keep this upwards pattern going. Yeah, do you feel you have missed out on any opportunities at school as a result of your gender? Just got the pie chart there to show that. So when asked question 4, 54% of participants expressed that they said they didn't feel like they missed out on any opportunities at school due to their gender, but 46% said that they did. So I've said that even though this is a narrow margin, data shows that more people felt that gender didn't restrict their opportunities compared to those that did. Those that said yes actually said that they felt like sport options. I think people mention they didn't have the chance to do rugby. They were, as a girl, they only were given like netball and hockey as sport options, and their subject choice was restricted, like physics and maths were examples, because of their gender. 2 participants said that they felt gender stereotyping played a role in that restriction of opportunity for them. Yeah. So in terms of implications, just finishing my part off now, the data shows that in a similar way to the question 3 data, there is some positive steps being forged in terms of gender inequality in educational environments. But obviously, despite this, the percentage of people that did feel restricted is still high. It's still not a low percentage, and we need to take that into account. So I've just said to increase the number of people satisfied with the opportunities afforded to them whilst in education, perhaps Tianmei's World could give pupils of both genders the chance to participate in Tianmei's World Academy-led workshops and programs.
On the screen right now are the 4 questions which I asked to get information on my SDG. So the question 5 of the survey asked whether the participants thought that their financial situation affected their education. So out of the 24 responses, 11 responded that they didn't think it had an effect. And in contrast, 13 said that it did, with 6 saying that it had a positive effect and 7 saying that it didn't. So the implications of this are that it shows that income inequality does have an effect on education in the UK context, and it would be important for Tianmei's World Academy to provide programs, opportunities for those people to close the gap between the number of people who have been negatively affected, and this would help to increase the outreach in the UK and further address SDG 10. Question 6 was a follow-up on question 5, and it asked whether the participants could think of any examples in which they had their opportunities limited by their financial situation. And 11 people could not think of an example, but 11 people could not think of an example, but 6 thought of an example where they had their educational opportunities limited. The main reasons they stated that they had the main examples they stated were a lack of private education, or not being able to have a tutor due to their financial situation. 6 people responded that they had extracurricular opportunities limited. So this wasn't really something that I was trying to find. So this is maybe I could have worded the question differently. So it would just been about educational opportunities instead. The implication of this question is similar to the previous one, as it shows that people have had the opportunities limited due to their financial situations. And Tianmei's World Academy continuing to build equal opportunities regardless of financial background will help with this problem. One possible way this could be achieved is by giving the people who've had the opportunities limited the opportunity to participate in the workshops and programs that the Tianmei's World Academy provide, or they could increase the amount of free educational content that they provide on their social media platforms. The 7th and 8th question on the survey focused on attitudes towards income inequality and whether people believe that people were rich due to having more opportunities or working harder, or that people were poor because they lacked effort or they had circumstances beyond their control. So in the first chart on the left, you can see that 84% of the people believe that the reason why people were rich was because they had more advantages, and only 16% believe that they worked harder. And on the second chart, you can see that circumstances beyond their control had a 92%, and lack of effort on their part only had 8%. This shows that the people that we asked felt quite sympathetic towards people who had their financial situation negatively affected. So the education negatively affected by their financial situation. And the implications that can be drawn from these results are that instead of focusing on educating people on income inequality, it's more important to actually give opportunities, as people are quite educated on income inequality in the UK context. So providing education opportunities is more important than educating on the matter.
So I'll just discuss a few limitations on this slide. So in relation to the first set of questions on SDG 5 that I considered, yeah, a few limitations can definitely be seen. So firstly, the wording of question 2 created some confusion for my participants. So as has been mentioned just before in this presentation, question 2 was, have you ever experienced any form of unwanted attention / sexual assault? And if so, please explain your answer. As you can see, I didn't include the in school wording. I didn't say, in school, did you feel this? In an educational setting, did you ever deal with this? In question 2, not specifically referencing an educational environment, several people just responded to it in just an everyday setting and just responded to it generally, which meant that there was inconsistencies, and I was having a few replies about I was assaulted in the club, I had unwanted attention at work, and obviously that's not completely relevant to this brief, which was a little bit annoying. By the question being worded more generally instead of education related, as I've mentioned here, it means we couldn't use several responses in the analysis as they just weren't applicable. In addition to the wording use of question 2, there was also a limitation that I noticed in relation to question 3's wording use. In question 3, I actually overcomplicated things a bit too much. And again, I think there was a potential for confusing the participants that were reading the survey. So the question asked, were you always supported by teachers to choose the subjects you were most interested in? And did you ever feel deterred from certain subjects? And then obviously, when I look at this back, I'm thinking, asking 2 questions within a question within one question maybe wasn't the best thing to do, and people would have felt confused. Oh, do I answer the first part of this? Do I answer the second part? So if I was to do the survey again, that would be something I would consider. I would really look at my wording use, and I would make it as easy to understand as possible to get the best responses. Just to raise the final point on this slide, an issue arose in relation to some participants not answering all the questions that were on the survey. We don't know which reason as to why they didn't respond, but maybe they just felt uncomfortable, or just felt like they couldn't give a response to something. Obviously, there was some sensitive topics within questioning of this SDG. You know, there was sexual assault that was asked about. There was unwanted sexual attention. You know, sexist comments can also be a difficult point for people to read about. So yeah. So reflecting on this, maybe I could have asked it in a different way, or said, if you don't want to respond, then don't. I could have made some adjustments, because it did, in the lack of answering to some things, it did lead to some consistencies in the survey.
As we completed the survey as a whole, we've got some recommendations in sort of what we do moving forwards. Obviously, we only did 3 sustainable development goals, and obviously a more thorough analysis for all 17 would be more beneficial, obviously. Obviously, we tried to pick the for ones most appropriate to Tianmei's World Academy. Obviously, education, to do with socioeconomic, which is obviously what Joel touched on with financial, and then obviously gender equality, which is what Sophie touched upon. Having a look at all of the SDGs as a whole, with a more large-scale project, that would obviously allow us to attain a greater understanding of the true impact that Tianmei's World Academy has on the SDGs, and how a company can further impact and widen their audience. So obviously, just a sort of natural expansion from these 3 topics to include all 17 would be recommended. Further, the project could be improved if a larger and more diverse sort of respondent base and sort of answers were collated and collected. Obviously, as we touched on at the start, they were primarily university students, and going down further, primarily Cardiff University students. So obviously, it would be interesting to see how people, one from different university backgrounds, would answer these questions, and 2 people from perhaps different people that didn't go into university, people that went straight into jobs, or just people from different walks of life more generally. You know, no survey is entirely without fault and entirely complete. You can always get more respondents to better it and get a more diverse and well-rounded group of responses. But obviously, like we said, they're primarily university students, and primarily Cardiff University students. So that could be improved upon further. So that would definitely be a recommendation. And obviously, and finally, the potential implementation of the concepts presented sort of above in the recommendation, they're in 3.1, 2, and 3 in the overall sort of project that we've worked together to complete. They could obviously help Tianmei's World Academy's goals of contributing to the fulfillment of these SDGs and increase its outreach in the UK.